The situation of the judiciary under Mubarak actually it was a very interesting experience. Mubarak, as a president of Egypt for the past 30 years or 3 decades, actually was not confronting the judiciary as a dictator who is trying to confront, who is trying to contain, trying to limit the rule of the judiciary. He was actually showing much respect to the institution itself. But the problem was that he was trying to get an indirect confrontation with the judiciary by actually establishing private courts and establishing military courts and referring most of the opponents and political opponents and most of his opposition parties to the exceptional courts under the law of emergency or emergency status. Because the Mubarak regime was a dictator regime, but still in the same time they were very clever dictators. They know how to do it. It's not by having the phone and calling some judge and giving him order to do X or Y. It was not working like this. It's more like having a specific judiciary, which is again the exceptional judiciary, which is actually moving in the same direction with the regime itself. So the judges are doing this, maybe you can say voluntarily. It's non-independent judges. You can say some stuff like that, but it was not a pressure from the government, from the other side. In the same time, the general judiciary has some judges who were against this practice from the regime. The 2011 revolution came and makes everything in Egypt ups and down. Everything was tested, everything was questioned. Especially in May 2012, the law of state of emergency was cancelled and was deleted. So there were no power for the SCAF or the military council to refer any defendants for the military courts. And there were no civilians being referred to military courts under the state of emergency law at this time. So the general judiciary gained the whole jurisdiction over almost all the issues and disputes. If we saw the Egyptian judiciary over the discourse of the past 5 years, it has been a very powerful institution, and this power should actually be balanced by some accountability. And if we apply this in practical terms, there are actually some problems and challenges. But let me just start by saying very briefly that there is a judicial body that is actually assigned for the task of asking the judges, which is the Judicial Inspection Department at the Ministry of Justice. But this body has many problems. First, that it's part of the Ministry of Justice, which is part of the executive, so it's not part of the judiciary. And this has been one of the main demands of the judges in Egypt, to have this department part of the Supreme Judiciary Council rather than the Ministry of Justice. This is the first point. The second point is that the Judicial Inspection Department actually has some problems and concerns regarding its transparency. So I, as a citizen, even sometimes as a judge, if I went there to be questioned regarding any complaint, I sometimes cannot know exactly what is going to happen and what is happening. So I cannot go and asking for the outcome of this, what kind of punishment it's going to do to be put, and issues like this. And if they decided, the judicial inspection element, to apply the most severe punish for any judge, which is the dismissal, which is firing him from his position, and this is the most severe punishment for any judge in the world. If they decide to do so, the Judicial Inspection Department should refer him, the judge, to the disciplinary court, which is actually consists of 3 judges, and they are a specific private circuit inside the general judiciary in order to have some sort of trial for the judge on whether or not to dismiss him or to fire him from his position. But this is very briefly the actual theoretical organization and establishment of the accountability bodies. But overall and generally, I do believe that there should be some reform steps regarding the accountability mechanisms in Egypt, because we have seen many problems and concerns from general publics in Egypt about the partiality and the neutrality of the judiciary, especially in the past 3 years. And the citizens have the complete right to have some sort of oversight, some sort of appealing to the judiciary and simply what's happening inside. What's happening? If I have a complaint, if we are hearing some rumors about any judge, we should know exactly what's happening, who is asking him, and what's the outcome of this asking. I believe that this stuff is not actually occurring to a good extent that can raise the public transparency and the public, that can raise the public confidence or trust in the judicial process as a whole, or in the judicial picture as an institution. But my concern is about the partiality, the neutrality of the institution, and that this institution should actually forget about the fact that it is defending the state. It should defend the rule of law itself, should defend the constitution rather than the political disagreements. One of the biggest challenges for any judiciary actually, when you have a transition, when you are coming out from a long dictator time and long tyranny, one of the biggest challenges is how to find your way in a very hard complications and mechanisms that's actually coming from every direction. And we have to agree that this is a very hard task for any judiciary, because the core part and the essence of any judicial work is the neutrality, and how to maintain this inside such a hard times.